It was late when he came to me. I'm not sure of the time, only that I was weary and keen to find my bed. The church floors had been swept and all the candles put out, and there was nothing left to do but lock the doors and go home, at long last. Truthfully, I was glad of it. Some of these autumn nights are of a dank, humid condition, and yet the stone walls render them cold and bitterly so. Shivering, I pushed the doors apart to leave, but as I did, so a hand came up between them. At least, I think it was a hand, for even at close quarters I saw it indistinctly, like the shadows that moved only at the periphery of your vision.
No.
A voice said in a soft musical cadence that reminded me of Irish, yet wasn't. Somehow I knew that without comprehending how or even why.
No, Father, don't close up yet. I wish to be baptized.
For a moment I was rigid with a helpless terror, for as I looked at the hand it seemed evermore a silhouette that seethed with formless motion. I felt it in my bones that it was evil, yet surely evil could not touch this door. Surely evil could not come inside. In a fragile stutter I asked, "Who are you?"
I'm just a sinner, yearning to be made clean again like all the others who come here. Why do you ask this of me?
I knew better than to admit my fear, and so I said, in as brisk of a tone as I could muster, "I was just about to leave for the night. Could you possibly come back tomorrow?"
I'm desperate, Father.
The shadow replied, and its hands parted the doors further still, as if the heavy oak weighed naught.
I want to go to heaven. Why won't you help me?
Desperate, it said, but I heard nothing in its voice but an awful breed of humor. My stare discerned a face out there embedded in the night, the hollow smears of eyes and mouth-like holes in a dim fog. Horror compelled me into stillness again. I only stood regarding the thing in quivering silence. Until that moment, I had always believed that the supernatural visitations detailed in the Bible to be solely metaphor, ciphers of God's great lesson. That I had been so starkly wrong appalled me, and it was only the frantic thought that this was a test of faith that prevented me from fainting listlessly away against the wall.
Will you turn me from your door?
Asked the shadow quietly. Its mouth did not move as it spoke, holding a formless grin. It put me in mind of the paper angels local children decorated their classrooms with at Christmas. Frail chains with snipped-out feathers, flat and quiet without dimension. "Are you a child of God?" I stammered, and the figure laughed. I wish I could forget that sound, soft and harsh at once. It was a blightant winter of mirth. It sickened me.
O child of God.
The shadow repeated.
Yes, Father, I am.
It paused, and it occurred to me that perhaps the quickest way to rid this creature was to just do as it asked. "Come in," I said, stumbling back from the doorway. "I'll baptize you, but then you have to leave, do you understand?"
Of course. Both of us have our homes to return to.
The shadow slipped between the doors into the chill gloom of the church, becoming almost one with it, but for the sense of a far greater darkness within it. It seemed I couldn't look directly at the creature as it followed me, or else my own self-preservation kept me from such foolishness. I only saw its edges fluttering like cinder about some fire, and I still hoped it to be an illusion, posed to fall away when I touched the holy water to its forehead. "Here," I stammered to the shadow. "Come to the font, and I'll lead you back to the Lord."
I'm sure you will, Father.
The figure replied, almost merrily.
I'm sure you will.
I can barely describe the particular dread that came over me as I stood beside this creature. The fear, such as when one wakes in the night to some figment of a half-dream stooped over one's mantle. It wasn't that I expected the spirit to injure me, or even take my life. I had the sense that it would not, but that the ease with which it might do so amused the being greatly. I wonder what it meant by toying with me so. dandling my terror as it might some helpless infant. "Wouldn't you like someone to witness?" I asked, my eyes turned ahead to the font, like a soldier trained to hold his form regardless of distraction. "There's no one I can call at this time, so—"
"Oh, I have my witnesses,"
assured the creature, and at once I seemed aware of every shape and shadow about the room, each of them tendrilless and vivid with malevolence. My own church had become a trap, a prison whose many inmates roamed free at the beckon of this thing that stood beside me. With a juddering hand I reached into the font and raised a dripping palmful of holy water. How cold it was, so cold it was like the sear of fire, numbing me to the elbow. I raised my arm toward the figure, not wanting to look at it, to find its forehead. The spirit gave a shuddering laugh, and I felt what must have been a hand above my wrist, guiding me, only it felt more like a cluster of feathers in its repulsive softness. "I baptize you in the name of the Father," I managed to choke out as the water trickled through my fingers, "and of the Son." Regret was already upon me in its swathes, but it was too late by far to draw back the sacrament. It had taken me great courage to extend my hand, and I still held fast the hope that the very act might rid me of this intruder and its horde. The shadow moaned beneath the water, a sound of filth and pleasure, and yet disgust. I felt the creature shake its face under the stream like a dog, and wondered that it still held my arm so steady. "And of the Holy Spirit," I said in a rush, and at last pulled back my fist, holding it limply as though in serving this creature I had broken the bone. "There, it is done. I hope it brings you peace." The spirit drew a long breath, another exertion of joy.
"Not that, Father,"
it whispered.
"Never that."
A weird light seemed to come from my left where the shadow remained. I couldn't help but turn to it, although my eyes could little comprehend what was before them. I can only say now that it was like glimpsing a man through a frosted window at night. Only not a man, for the shape of it shivered and changed and thrashed about like the ribbons of the wind.
"You can go now, Father,"
proclaimed the shadow.
"You may close the doors behind you. I'll find my own way out, I'm sure."
I made briskly for the exit, not daring to run, lest like a pack of hounds the creatures and its followers might be triggered by instinct to come after me across the churchyard. Thankfully my house was not far off, merely down the street. I was locked within it in under 5 minutes. Little though such measures would matter to such a being as was after me. I couldn't sleep, of course, not that I was tired. The idea of closing my eyes in the darkness was discarded at once, for had I done so, I would have only imagined the fluttering of winged beasts observing me from every corner. Instead, I sat upon my knees and prayed to be forgiven for what I had done, that my mistakes would not bring about some deathly consequence. Yet as I prayed, I felt an emptiness, which as the hours passed, I became convinced was the very absence of God Himself listening to me. Whether through His disappointment in my failure, or His ceasing to exist, I do not know. I was definite, however, in that I had opened the gates of heaven to a great danger. As my frantic objections deepened, I came to further conclusion to my visitor could only have been the favored child of God Himself, who He had once cast down, Lucifer, Satan, the devil. Likely he had made vain his appearance so that I wouldn't know him, but I well recall his beautiful voice, soft and loving with the silk of evil. I could have wept, so aghast was I at what I had done, but somber dread kept my dry eyes and grave until the red sunset thundered its way up into the horizon. The quiet of an absent God persisted. Baptized and thus returned to his birthplace, what had the devil done? Already he might have torn havoc across heaven, sullying an endless number of innocent souls with his cruelty, recruiting angels to his black cause. And what of God, his greatest enemy? I should believe that the Father, being omnipotent, invulnerable to even Lucifer's warfare, but the longer I pray, I cannot help but feel that I am shouting into an open grave. Now as I regard my clasping hands, I am appalled that I dared hope I might be cleansed of my mistake. It was my cowardice after all, that so condemned the God I'd served all my life. I'd known the intruder to be of ill intent, and still I gave him what he asked for, without resistance, without complaint. Lord, I was an idiot. I know now what I have done.